Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi kids, welcome back again with me Miss Dewi in our science lesson. The whole last week we already learned about the classifying plants. Now let's take a look for some review for this chapter so it makes you to understand it better. Welcome to the club. Now, when we do classifying plants based on the stem they have, we divide into two. There are woody stem and non-woody stem. So now the question, from all these plants, where do they're classified into? Woody stem or non-woody stem? Now first the grasses. Do they go into the woody or non-woody stem? Very good. Grasses is non-woody. What about woody vines? Woody vine goes to the woody stems. What about the shrubs? Do they have stem? Yes, they have a woody stem. What about the herbs? No, they don't. So they go to the non-woody stem. What about the trees? This is the very distinct example of the woody stem. What about the non-woody vines? Well, the name is explained. It has no woody stem, so it goes to non-woody stems. So now guys, that's how you use the plant classification, so you can put them into a group based on the question. Here, based on the stem they have, woody or non-woody. Let's take a look next. Now, how to classify plants based on the flower they produce. So we classify plants into two, flowering and non-flowering. What about Ixora? They include flowering or non-flowering? Yes, they are flowering plants. What about the fern? Do they produce flower? No, they don't. So they go into non-flowering. What about the grape tree? Remember, the fruits coming up mostly in the flowering plants. So after they grow flower, they will grow the fruit. And what about grass? It is flowering. We can see the beautiful grass flower all over, right? What about the algae? Well, this is the not flowering plant, so we can put in our list. The not flowering plants include fern, algae, and moss. So there are three examples of non-flowering plants, whether the rest of the flower commonly produce flower. Okay, so this is the three keywords: fern, algae, and moss for the non-flowering plants. The rest usually produce flower. Now, based on the seed or spore production, based on what plants produce to grow young, we divide the plants into the seed production plants and the spore producing plants. Now let's take a look for the papaya. Do they have seed? Yes, they are. So they go into the seed producing plants. What about this, the rocky melon? Definitely seed producing plants. What about the lychee? Look, we can see the seed coming out from the flesh of the fruit. And what about this, the moss? Do they have seed? No, they don't, because they produce spore. What about the guava? Guava goes into the seed production plants. What about the peach? It goes to the seed producing plant as well. Now what about a fern? Do they produce seed? They don't. So they are spore producing plants example. And mango goes here. So there you are. The most common spore producing plants is also moss and fern. So moss and fern, that's the keyword. And the other fruits usually produce seed because that's the function of fruit. They use to cover the seed inside the fruit. Next, based on the fruit they have, based on the fruit they bear. So we divide fruit into 4 different types. First, the fleshy fruit, dry fruit, fruit with the rough skin, and the fruit with the smooth skin. Now let's take a look. What is the tomato goes into? Awesome. It has a fleshy and juicy fruit, so it goes into the fleshy fruit. And then the peapods goes into the dry fruit. It has less amount of water inside. What about the dandelion? Yes, dandelion has less amount of water in their fruit, so they go to the dry fruit. What about lychee? Oh, what about cherries? Cherries goes to the fruit with the smooth skin. Then hazelnut goes to the dry fruit. What about apple? Yes, it has a smooth skin. Now the rambutans, do you know? Yes, it is goes to the fruit with the rough skin. Now let's move on kiwi fruits. It has a rough skin, and the watermelon goes into the fruit with the smooth skin. What about the jackfruit? It goes to the fruit with the rough skin, and also with the durians. Remember? What about the orange? It has a flashy fruity juice, so it goes there, and also the grape. So do not confuse with all type of fruit just based on what distinct character they have. Sometimes they can have more than one characteristic in one fruit. Okay, now guys, let's remember ourselves about the parts of the plant. What is the most beautiful part of the plant that usually colorful and have very various form that can attract insects? It call it flower. Now, what is the things that connect the upper part with the lower part of the plants? We call it stem. And when the stem grow big and heavy and covered by the outer, we call it trunk. And now this, the most important part of the plants. They have a lot. They are equipped with chlorophyll, so it can make them produce food. The function as the kitchen of the plant. We call it leaf. And that's the under part of the plant. It usually under the soil. It has the function to collect water and mineral as their supply for life. We call it root. So that's the part of the plants. Now we already discussed about where we can find the plants, like mostly in every place in the world. What about this? Where this plant grow? This good on the ground. What about this? Where's this plant grow? In the other object, like building, like fence, like the walls. We can also find plants here. Where's that? On the rock or on the mountains. And then where these things, we can find also plants on the other plants. They can stick or they can on the other plants. On the water, they live on the surface of the water, and in the water they live inside the water like algae and the anemone. Then this is the question about the distinct plants that we can find. One of the tallest plants in the world. This is very distinct, the baobab tree. What is the largest flower in the world? We call it Rafflesia arnoldi. It has a very distinct smell, so it can attract the insects who goes inside, and they can easily eat the insect that is straight. The tiny plants, moss. It is the first plant that can grow in rocks or in the rotten woods. After they grow, the other bigger plants can grow along. That's the function of moss. And the fruit with many seeds, which one? Absolutely this. And the fruit with one seed, like avocado, like lychee, la, peach. That's the example of fruit with one seed. Now, let's we divide the plants into the woody stem plants into three: trees, shrubs, and woody vine. You still remember to classify as a tree that's supposed to be 6 meters tall or over, and the shrub is less than 6 meters, and the woody vines is the vines with the wood. So the baobab trees is an example of the tree, and also the coconut tree. It has a long tree, and the shrub example like hibiscus plants, rose plants, and bougainville, they are classified into the shrub. So it has the woody stem, but the length is less than 6 meters. And the woody vine example, liana. Now, the non-woody stem we divide into three groups: grasses, herbs, and non-woody vine. Grasses doesn't have any stem, and it grow on the ground, such as rice plant, wheat plant, and the herb example like the iris plant and the buttercup plants. And the non-woody vine example like morning glory, while the grasses such as wheat plant, rice plant, and barley plants. And that's the end of our review in classifying plants. Keep on reading and practice. Thank you for joining. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.